Have you ever felt like you studied really hard but your grades didn't reflect your efforts? Or that you understood the homework for a class but were surprised by the questions on the test? Have you crammed for a test and ended up sleep deprived and overwhelmed? The study cycle is a 5-step approach to studying that can help you plan your time, maximize your efforts, and learn at a deeper level. The 5 steps are: preview, attend class and read, review, reorganize, and self-quiz. Let's start with previewing. Most of us are familiar with watching movie trailers prior to going to see a movie. Think about why you watched a trailer before you go see a film. It could be to know what you're getting into, to get excited about the movie, or to understand the plot better. Previewing is studying what movie trailers are for films. Before attending class, it's helpful to get a general framework of what you'll be expected to know that class day. That framework will help your brain organize the information that you hear in class and retrieve it more effectively later. Spend about 10 to 15 minutes referring to your textbook, your syllabus, or any relevant notes that will help you understand the big picture of the lecture material for that day. Keep track of the questions that arise in your mind. Are there certain topics you want to know more about? Are you wondering how this information might relate to previous topics? Or how the content relates to your everyday life? Now, when you attend class, you'll be more active because you'll be looking for answers to questions you came up with while previewing. You'll also have a general framework to organize information as you hear it in class. The next step in the study cycle is attending class and reading. Attending class and doing the assigned readings are examples of what we call input. Input is important because we must be exposed to new concepts before we can master them. However, if you find yourself simply listening to lecture or reading without actively thinking about the material, it's unlikely that you'll remember the material when you need to. Whether you're reading or attending class, don't try to capture every word. Look for key points and illuminating examples. Write down the answers to any question that you formulated in the previewing stage and keep track of any new questions that arise. You'll need them when you need to go to the next stage. Review. Within 24 hours of attending lecture, review notes to find gaps and fill them in. Studies show that if you don't review the new information you hear in lecture, after 24 hours you only retain about 60% of the information. After 2 days without practice, you retain even less, about 40%. Forgetting 40 to 60% of new information would probably result in a D or F on a test. If you have gaps or unanswered questions in your notes, use your resources. Compare notes with a classmate, go to professor or TA office hours, visit a tutor, or use a textbook to answer your questions. Once you've filled out your notes, you'll want to start reorganizing information. Attending lecture and doing the readings are examples of input-based studying. To be successful at the college level, it's important to balance input methods with output methods. That is to say, study methods that require you to actively reproduce the information and make it your own. When you reorganize your notes, don't feel stuck with the order that the materials were presented in class. Try to find ways of organizing the information that seems useful and relevant to you. Examples include summaries, pictures, diagrams, timelines, concept maps, and lists. Now it's time to move on to the final step in the study cycle, self-quizzing. Self-quizzing is the most impactful output method you can use because it most closely resembles what you'll be asked to do on the test. When you're self-quizzing, you want to make sure that you match your study questions to the type of questions that will show up on the test. The materials that you created in the reorganized phase should provide ample material, but if you're having trouble coming up with self-quizzing questions, go to the end of your textbook chapter to see if there are questions there, talk to other students to see if you can all create a pool of questions, find out if your professor shares old tests, ask your TA or professor for help, or use online resources like Khan Academy and Quizlet. Now that you have a pool of quiz questions, come back to those questions later in the day and try to answer them without assistance. That means putting away your notes, textbook, computer, or any other information so that you can assess whether or not you really know the answers. Full disclosure, when you're self-quizzing without assistance, it will feel challenging. Sometimes you'll want to look back at your notes to fill in gaps, and that's totally fine. The important thing is that you discover those gaps in understanding while you're studying and not when you sit down to take the test. Let's review the steps in the study cycle. Preview, take lecture notes and read, review, reorganize, and self-quiz. There's one last element that we haven't yet mentioned, and that's planning. Remember, you're preparing for the exam on day 1 of a new unit. Reflect on how well you're doing and adjust your plan as needed to study more effectively and efficiently. If you'd like help developing a personalized study plan, make an appointment with the learning specialist at the Sanger Learning Center today.